Hi, friends. Welcome to the Like-Minded Radicals, the podcast designed for individuals like you who believe there's a better way to work and live. Hello, friends, and welcome to the very first episode of the Like-Minded Radicals, the little podcast that could. I don't know about you, but I think it's time for a workplace revolution, one that celebrates our innate gifts and creates an opportunity for us each to express who we are, not to squash it. I am so honored to have as my first guest, former venture capitalist turned founder of the Conscious Business Institute, author, and I suspect soon to be guru, the one and only Peter Matthies. Peter, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Kendra. It's so cool to be here.
So I met you through the Conscious Business Institute, which I definitely want to get into. But let's start kind of simple, kind of not. Who is Peter Matthies today?
Oh, an ever-evolved being. I'm trying to remind myself every day that I'm not a physical being stuck here on this planet, but I'm really a spiritual being having a physical experience, because that would change everything.
Yes.
And so right now, I've done a lot in the work of conscious business and transforming the workplace, and I'm currently personally at a transition where it is even more from doing to being. And when I hear people that talk to me, they say, Peter, you're here to become the lake, to reflect back to people, and that's all you need to do.
I love that. You've been on a journey, and I want to get to the kind of journey that led you to create the conscious business. But hearing you just say what you just said, knowing that your past, you were a venture capitalist, definitely feels like there was probably some misalignment. What was that first kind of crack in the facade that had you really understanding this idea that you are a spiritual being?
The crack in the facade about that was when I met with my mentor, Rob, for the first time in my life. I sat in front of him, never saw him before. He never saw me before. And for 3 hours, he told me who I was and who my family was and who my then wife was, why we had conflicts, why my parents had conflicts, how they behave in conflicts. Down to the T, he saw not me, he saw my soul. He saw into me. And that's looking into me was the biggest gift that I received in my life, because it allowed, first of all, it brought about a completely different being state for me. And secondly, seeing that allowed me to actually step into that.
It's got to be an incredible situation. I feel like ultimately that's what we're all looking for, is this some sort of acknowledgement or permission to be who we are. And it can come to us in very different modalities. I think for me, my initial kind of insights was through like strength finders, and just starting with that idea of like, well, I am different. I do have strengths. What are my unique strengths? And then mine definitely progressed through to human design. Was a phenomenal experience for me where I really felt seen. Do you have a favorite assessment or modality other than Rob and his unique gifts?
I use a variety of them, and it really depends on the person and what they're ready to. We like the ones that Rob does, because it really stretches the paradigm. You know, there's no unseeing, there's no undo button after you experience that. But there are different things that we bring into it. Human design helped me a ton. It opened a facet for me, which really helped me change the way I show up in the world and how I create success. Another one is the one where we look at out of power behaviors, as we call them, when we operate from fear, the reason why we create stress, to have an understanding of that so we can just show up more empowered.
Yeah, I love that. What's your magic?
My magic is illumination magic.
Love it. So is mine. We'll have to leave a link or something for people to explore that. Or obviously they could look at the Conscious Business Institute. Highly suggest folks research the CBI Master Practitioner Program, which this podcast is really a result of that. And I called it the Like-Minded Radicals, one, because I think joining your group, I found a group of like-minded individuals. And not that they're like me or they think like me, but probably exactly the opposite, that they're so different from me. But we bonded over this idea that, one, we're all queuing up to change the world of work, and to really understand our unique gifts and talents, to use them in a way to kind of progress that endeavor. But I
Yeah,
also chose. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, I've seen that throughout my career as a venture capitalist, or even I work for Accenture. You're probably pretty familiar with that. And I always saw that people are having this itch that they can't quite reach. Not
Oh,
the
yeah.
itch is something missing. We're talking about business. We're talking about achieving things. We're talking about how can I get better? How can I discover what I'm here to do, and all these kind of things. But there are some deeper questions that people ask ourselves, and we oftentimes don't have the forum to address those. Like, what's my purpose? Who am I here to be during this lifetime? How can I step into flow that maybe 5% of our population live by, but 95% not? So how can we create our individual life that seems downstream instead of upstream? And
Yeah.
how can we create organizations that just operate by a different paradigm?
Yep. I think I'll quickly just wrap up. I chose radical because I wanted to create kind of a provocative and uncomfortable word, but I also want to create kind of a safe understanding of it. I think, what we're looking to do is potentially introduce something that many organizations might find somewhat radical today. But down the line, they won't, right? When Henry Ford suggested that we increase people's pay and we cut their hours and move to a 5-day work week, that was seen as radical. And now, we take that as expected. So getting in the door to kind of create this radical change and to create that downward flow instead of going up, how do you introduce that to organizations? And how do you define consciousness for them in a way where they don't immediately go, ooh, it's kind of a woo-woo word, or that makes me uncomfortable?
Yeah, we don't really talk about consciousness from the get-go. No, all of us want to build a thriving organization, a thriving life. And so the question that we asked ourselves at the onset of the Conscious Business Institute is, what really creates a thriving organization? What is a conscious organization where we swim downstream instead of upstream, where we create thriving environments where people want to be, where they belong, where we can create cool things together? And so we've created this model, which actually came to me in a meditation, and then we validated it with, I don't know, with hundreds and hundreds of leaders all around the world. And it seems to be a model where they say, okay, if we can build an organization that way, that would be awesome. And lo and behold, if we go into this model, it ultimately comes down to consciousness, I find, because if we look at our success, our success, personal success, but also business, stops exactly at the point where our consciousness has stopped growing.
Mm.
So we can create very material success. We can become a president of an organization. But again, if we look at that individual as CEO of a company, where their consciousness has stopped growing, maybe they feel they push people too hard, their success in life will be blocked. Maybe it's with their wife, maybe it's with their children, maybe it's employees pushing back. So it's a real eye-opener for people to say, what is it that I'm not seeing? What do I need to become conscious about that would open me up to a completely new room of possibility in my organization? And that is very compelling for a lot of people.
It is. It certainly is. You touched a little bit on the idea of being and having and amassing wealth or success. I found that to be one of the most kind of eye-opening. Can you quickly walk us through kind of this idea of the be, do, have model?
Yes. It was actually another mentor that I worked with, and she basically said, our current model of success is not designed to make us happy. Our current model of success, consciously or unconsciously, that we are educated with, is the reason for our suffering. So it's a model that's a do, accumulate more, and then we become model. So we're always encouraged to do more, accumulate more stuff, hoping that we will become something, happy or a lawyer or wealthy or married or whatever. And we can clearly see in our world that it's not working. Yeah, it's a model that's a setup, and nobody has told us that. Our entire culture is based on that model. So we asked ourselves, what's the model that would actually create thriving for us as individuals? And the model that actually creates thriving is that we have to be authentically ourselves first. And of course, the first question is, what is that? Because we've been educated out of our authenticity since
Yeah.
childhood.
Yeah.
I think we are authentic, but we don't really know what authenticity is. So if we show up authentically, and we can see that in people that are very powerful actually on stage, or Richard Branson's, there's an attraction to being authentic. And then do what our gifts inspire. Again, here our magic comes into play. If we know what our magic is that we're here to bring into the world, and then we receive what we call essences, the feeling states that really drive us in life. So it sounds very simplistic, but it's a fundamental shift. It's like the earth is flat versus the earth is round.
Yeah. It's mind blowing, but it is simplistic. It's about starting with who you are. And I think that's one of the key kind of focus areas is for this podcast is to really celebrate that, because like you said, we've been educated out of that. I mean, my entire life I've been masking and trying not to be different and feeling weird and, not seeing my different perspective and my creativity and innovation as gifts necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was climbing the corporate ladder that started the itch. I
Mm-hmm.
love that analogy,
Mm-hmm.
the itch, and feeling like, wait a minute, okay, like I've achieved really great success. I love my work. I'm very proud of the work I've done, but it doesn't quite feel ease. It doesn't feel like I've done
Yeah.
it my way. I did it the way I thought it needed to be done, or I was told it was supposed to look like, versus really feeling like I'm showing up with the gifts and talents that I have. And so, my hope is that we can help people understand that it's not as hard to find your purpose as we may have made it out to be, that it really does start with you and understanding your gifts and talents, and that you don't have to quit your day job in order to find ways to express who you are. It's really simple. It's about being a little bit differently, and yeah, the payoff is certainly that ease and that flow.
Yeah. I'm sure you have a long story to tell because you're a powerful woman.
Thank
And
you.
sometimes maybe you've been told you're too much or too
Oh yeah.
powerful, too loud, and those kind of things. So those are the moments when we hear that we're not okay being authentic. And so we forget and we try to compensate somehow. And for me, it was exactly the same way. It's a different thing than for you, but we all think that we're authentic. Again, I've never heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm not authentic."
Yeah.
But we have to acknowledge that we might not know what our authenticity is. When you're 50 years old and you look back at 20 and said, "Oh my God, I had no idea who I was." At 20, you would have said, "Of course I'm authentic."
Oh, yeah. 18.
So,
I knew exactly who I was. It I think there's a lot of judgment, right? Because we're trying so hard to conform and not to be judged. We end up judging ourselves and others, and we try to mask our individuality and the things that make us different. If you were to think back of your days as a venture capitalist, what behaviors or activities are you doing today that your old self would have judged the heck out of?
um, being kind,
Wow.
being gentle, um, soft spoken, not just the hard line and focused and goal oriented, allowing things to evolve rather than having a plan and a strategy to do everything. Um, being money oriented versus being people oriented and having the shift that actually works. There are many little things. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at
I
that.
love that. I'm like actually getting emotional. Like that's very powerful. I think I was expecting you. I remember what you told a story about driving in traffic and I think meditating or something. I was expecting or recently I think doing some retreats or something. But that is so beautiful and powerful because there have become so many expectations placed on us for our
Mm,
gender roles, right? And expectations around how we'll behave. And I feel like it's one of the things I see in society is, for women, we play small. We, we get told we're too loud, we're too much. And for men, you're forced to kind of play big. So what
Yeah.
does it look like when we actually strip away from those expectations?
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say, I when I spoke to one of my advisors at that time, he looked at me in the eyes and he says, "Peter, it's your kindness and your gentleness that actually brings you success." And I was nearly slapping him because I was actually fired for not being tough enough at
Wow.
one point. And a few years later, I was in Los Angeles and I was meeting with a lady who was still getting, I think, $20,000 from the Actors Guild, and she was a very energetic woman. And she said, "Peter, literally in her words, if you sit next to me in the meeting with your kindness and gentleness, I'll give you half of it. You don't need to
Wow.
say a word, just bring your energy along." And I said, "Oh, maybe there's a value to this after all." Yeah.
I think that's what's so surprising is it can be so easy, right?
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be easy. And we've created this hustle culture, this idea that like busy is a badge and, that stress is something to be proud of. And yet the itch is definitely driven by it, but it can't be like this. It shouldn't have to be this hard. Like I don't have a hustle. Like I'm ambitious, but I'm a projector in the human design. Like I don't have a constant energy source. I don't have hustle in me.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's authentically you. You're ambitious. You want to get places. You want to create something. You're a smart cookie. But again, how you go about doing that is maybe the thing that you're adjusting at this time at all.
Yeah.
It's been over a long time.
And that's to me, I love Simon Sinek and I love the start with why, but I've been really through your course. That's what I've really wrestled with is does it really start with why? Because I think if we really strip back everybody's why to they want to connect with other people. They want to share their experiences with other people. They want to collaborate and shift people's mindsets or shift the collective or impact others. But it's the how is so hard to understand. It has to start with how. How am I going to use those unique gifts that I have? I better be able to articulate them, first of all. And so for me, this podcast is really about amplifying other people's voices and the work that other people are doing,
Yeah.
which is why I'm really glad to celebrate you and the Conscious Business Institute. Can you just give people a quick kind of rundown around what the Conscious Business Master program is and what they could do if this sounds something that's appealing to them, if they are starting to feel that itch?
Yes, it's a program that's, I have to say, unlike anything else because it's truly transformative. I just talked to a former client of mine. I worked with him 13 years ago, and he said he's a COO of a tech company, pretty a public tech company, and he says it was the single most life-changing experience that he had.
Wow.
And so it originated basically, I think, a long time ago when I was in my venture capital office and I was looking up for things. How can I work with more fulfillment and satisfaction and bridge this money world, this success world with my inner search for maybe even spiritual connection or some deeper sense of fulfillment. And I didn't find a curriculum. There was nothing out there. So I looked around. I went to Sri Lanka to do Ayurvedic retreats. I worked with shamans. I traveled around the globe. I did all these kind of things and piecemealed it together, these wisdom principles and the business principles to create this master program. So it takes us through the approach to build thriving organizations and thriving lives, which I've spoken earlier about, but to do that in a way that really touches on subjects from who are you here to be during this lifetime? Why are you creating stress? Building fulfilling relationships. How can you create relationships that actually build the belonging and connection that you want? What's your purpose? How do you bring it into the world? And how do you create an organization around that? In addition, we have a faculty which is pretty outstanding. I mean, it's
Yeah,
former
they are.
CEO, Unilever, Paul Pullman, really incredible people. And there's the opportunity on top of that to create out of the master program the first graduate degree, master or PhD in conscious business if people choose to do that. So it's a pretty unique little program, big
And
program.
it's a huge program. I love it. Where would people go to find out more?
The easiest way is master.consciousbusinessinstitute.com. Master.consciousbusinessinstitute.com.
Fantastic. I mean, it's certainly been life-changing for me. I think I was really I benefited because my coach at the time actually was thinking about enrolling, and she did. We did it together. Um, and I just was really struggling with this concept of, okay, well, now I've identified that I want to do things my way, but what does that really look like? And, I've got
Mhm.
all these other interests. I've started to kind of to go down the rabbit hole of near-death experiences. Like, what does that have to do with business? And I remember it was literally day one, and you reference near-death experiences, and that's part of the early curriculum. And I was like, whoa, wait, what does this have to do with business? Like, but this is where I should be. And then I was going through masterclass, and the only one I'd done was Richard Branson's, and you used him as an example. And I was like, the universe is giving me signs. Like, all of these disparate ideas and concerns and questions, like you said, were starting to kind of come together. And who knew? Conscious Business Institute master program, like, that
Yeah,
was where there were so many answers.
yeah. And thank you that you bring that up, because I feel oftentimes we still compartmentalize. We want to have a life, but like, is this good for business? How do I lead? How do I manage people? But it's just life.
Yeah.
We have to look at it from a little bit more holistic perspective. How do we deal with people? Business is not about business. It's about people. And we want all to be fulfilling our deeper human desires and our human drivers. And so how can we create organizations which are so cool because we can create something together in that way? So we need to look at it from a more holistic perspective if we really want to build those kind of organizations.
Which is exciting because I think we're starting to see organizations potentially acknowledge that maybe work-life balance isn't necessarily the right thing. I think there's a
Mm.
component of that, but that immediately kind of creates a demarcation between the two. And I prefer to think about it as work-life integration. Like, I need tools that are going to help me do my work from anywhere, right? And enjoy this life that I have, but still be able to contribute. And I think that idea of contribution is what drives humans, right? There's a human need for us to make impact. It's again,
We
kind
all
of
want to do that.
everyone's why.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
want to make a difference and we
What do
want to
you,
create something. So
yeah. What do you see as the future of work? Are we moving to a more human-centric leadership style?
I see it a little bit more in an evolutionary perspective. If I look at it from the earthworm reality, we're nudging along and we've been trying to improve employee engagement. And if you look at the statistics, not much has changed. I mean, we've
No, in
tried all
40
these
years.
free Greek yogurts and those kind of things. And it's not going to change until we change our consciousness and just approach work in a little different way. I don't see it happen from our human egoic standpoint. There's not much change because there's something that's holding us back, and we can speak about that. But from an evolutionary perspective, I see that, like the younger generations, they just want to work with purpose. If you look at Generation Y, the next generation that will come will be the indigo children, which are just more connected to each other. So they are searching for belonging and connection. And if organizations don't build that, then they won't be able to attract those kind of people. So we're not doing it ourselves. There's a bigger evolutionary shift that's happening,
Mm.
which is very encouraging, actually. So we are just midwives who are actually bringing this into the world. Yeah, and we might kind of be on the back end of it and be the laggards. Or we might have somebody who jump up and say, I'm going to be part of this, because it's super exciting.
Yeah, it's extremely exciting. And I definitely feel it. And it's interesting that multiple modalities kind of talk about the idea of this shift.
Mhm.
That we're seeing a shift in kind of third dimensional beings moving to the fifth dimension. In human design, they talk about, 2027 and a number of things. I mean, I think even like in astrology, there's some major shifts, unique kind of things aligning, which makes it really exciting. And I don't know about you, but I found a bit of a freedom in taking off my mask to be able to even talk about these things because they are somewhat radical. But they are going to not be perceived as radical in the coming years. And I have 100% faith in
Oh,
that.
yeah. And I'm speaking from California, so everybody is running around with ching ching, and you go to a Whole Food store and you read about post life regression, and you
Yeah.
can talk to anybody on the street. So my entire life has become totally normal to speak about these things. But I'm well aware that when I work in Chile, or when I work in Germany, or in China, or in Australia, as a matter of fact, it's not there yet. People are
No.
very uncomfortable with these topics. So we need to find our tribe. And this is one part of the master program, or why we're having this conversation as well here, that Buckminster Fuller says environment is stronger than willpower. So if we have the will to change something, we need an environment that helps us grow, that we're not a
Yeah.
rose in the desert, but that we have some people at least that we can be transparent and open with,
Right.
without constant criticism and those things.
No, it is, and I think that's what the Conscious Business Institute, the master program, was for me, and why I felt compelled to kind of create this little podcast and a community around it, which is where the like-minded really comes from, is that idea of a community and amplifying each other's voices. Like, we've been working in this kind of zero-sum game competition, and a big premise and foundation of conscious business or conscious capitalism is, right, how do we create a win-win for everybody? And so for those listening, I've created the club at the Like-Minded Radicals, where you can kind of follow along, or if you're a service provider, the network, and you can connect with other service providers and other people who are trying to shift this, because it's going to take all of us as a collective to really put the pressure on organizations to start thinking about how they expand their consciousness. You mentioned we're being held back. What's holding us back?
Oh, what's holding us back is our deeply ingrained survival-based mechanism that we've learned 8,000 years ago. I call it the model of
Ah,
dominance subservience, which is basically a behavioral model that we follow in our world, whether we are aware of it or not, in personal relationships, in businesses, in governments, and society at large. And it's basically based on the premise that there's scarcity. There's not enough money, there's not enough food, there's not enough time, there's not enough this, there's not enough oil. And so all of our decisions that we make are driven by this model, or many of the decisions, if we are not in the flow of life. So it's basically the belief that there's not enough out there, which we've been ingrained in our culture from early education, even our parents. And this belief has now mirrored back to us that we are not enough,
yep.
which is critical. So we show up in the world getting afraid of criticism, or am I good enough, or do I need to work harder, or do I need to make more money to feel that I'm good enough? So a lot of what we do is in compensation for this model and trying to be good enough.
Yep.
That's a little bit of a
We
too much.
mask. We mask, we use different words, we get very defensive. It's definitely
Yeah.
the model of dominant subservience is one of the things that really stuck with me. It's like once the mask has been removed, like there's no going back.
Yes, yeah. And maybe just if you're a leader, if you're in the work world, to just really sit back and say, how can I be of service to my people? How can I truly create an organization where people love being, love
Yeah.
coming, love contributing, love giving their best, and knowing deep down that that will benefit the profit of the organization, that, yeah, but not with a profit in the back pocket and saying, oh, if I do this, then we'll create that.
Yep.
That's one
I
of the
think
biggest shifts which we need to make, I believe, is to move from I have the profit, the carrot in front of me, to actually genuinely speaking about, okay, how can I build a thriving organization where people love to be, where we love our customer, where we love the things that we do, trusting that that will create better results.
Do you think that organizations focus on employee experience and workplace experience, that like that experiential piece is kind of starting to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. If we see that, but it's still a doing level. It's like, how can we create a better experience? Because otherwise we can't attract people. I was just
Right.
talking to a big airline manufacturer and airplane manufacturer, and I think they lose 40% of their people. That's what they're expecting, and they can't replace them. They're like, holy cow, what are we going to do? Because nobody wants to work in that conservative environment. So yes, we need to create a better workplace experience. They're pushed by it. But what if we genuinely want to create that? Not
Yeah.
because we have to, and we put it on the to-do list and we create a strategy around it, then let's do it. be it. Genuinely be it.
Be it.
That's the challenge which we are up against. And that's, as a leader, the growth edge that we can move into.
For me, the future of work looks like the ideal future of work looks like, yes, a continued appreciation for creating a purpose-driven organization. Individuals want to feel like the company is doing good in the world. They want to be galvanized around this kind of rallying cry of, positivity. But really, if you want to build a flourishing organization and you want to keep your people, then figure out how to facilitate for them individual understanding of who they are, help them create roles for their souls, not just fit into a role, but actually, identify where they want their career to go and be able to shape that role so that it aligns with their unique gifts. That's going to keep people. That's going to facilitate that experience for me. And I'm not leaving because I'm finding fulfillment in my job. I guess the other component would probably be figure out how to financially reward and create more profit sharing potentially with your people as well. And then you don't lose them. I think entrepreneurship in today's world, we've really somewhat romanticized. Not everybody is going to be a good entrepreneur. Not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. So if we really want to keep people within our larger organizations, we've got to get human and we've got to get kind of uncomfortable and weird with getting down to that granular level of those human components.
I love soul role.
It's
Which means I, have an employee, have to know what my soul really is and what I'm here to express. So that discovery, again, we do in the master program, but that's an important discovery.
100%. That's where it starts. And that's overwhelming and it doesn't need to be. There are a ton of different types of assessments and it might be Enneagram, it might be cultural values assessment, it might be the energetic leadership profile, but getting into one of, taking that and finding the one that just like lights you up and kind of has that light bulb moment, that's where it can begin. And I want to help people understand that it can be easy, but that is exactly where it starts. And organizations that figure that out and figure that out quick are the ones that are going to really succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, we have one organization, for example. It's a small organization. They're about 40 people now, but they're fast growing. Everyone, they went through the entire conscious business program that we do for an entire year and a half with their team.
Wow.
Everybody went through it. So it was a really amazing experience because it created this bond and understanding of each other. And it's just an amazing team. And now we still do the personality assessment with everyone that comes in. So everybody gets their color reading and how they fit into the team. And it's just like, oh my God, they say, we've never experienced that before. This is so cool. So just little things like that help a lot.
Yeah. Especially, once you can articulate what you bring to the table, if everyone in the room can do that, then yeah, you can look at this team dynamic and go, oh, wow, like we can make work so much more efficient and simpler and enjoyable when you're doing that task that I hate and you're doing that task and I'm doing all the things, it doesn't have to be, it's not going to be 100%. It's always going to evolve. But I think if we can't articulate what we're good at, there's problems and we'll never be even close to kind of crafting that experience for ourselves.
Yeah.
What's next for Peter?
What's next for me? Oh my God. I'm just releasing this book, so you're catching me on the tail end of writing a book.
Amazing.
Recording it, putting it all together, and it's a ton of work. But I'm going to release it. It's called Plan B for Being, a Professional's Guide to Authentic Success. So,
and when is it released? Where can we find it?
It will be released next month in September.
Excellent.
And you can find more about it at www.planbe.live.
Ooh.
Planbe.live, yes.
That's an accomplishment. Congratulations. Like that can be no easy feat.
Thank you. It's not. I started 3 times. I've been hearing from my guides, write a book for 20 years. And now I'm sitting down to do it. And I've got 4 or 5 more in the pipeline. So
wow. That's incredible. Oh, I'm really excited for you. I might be asking for some advice later. We'll see. I feel like my guides have been like, come on, do something. Right now, we'll stick with the like-minded radicals.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to just, have these types of conversations and just hopefully share a couple little nuggets with people that make them say, "Oh, that's that itch. That's what that's been."
Yes. Yeah. I'll support it in any way I can, because we need these kind of communities, this kind of exchange to literally build new neural pathways and to strengthen them and to allow what we feel to actually um, grab ground in the world.
Yeah,
So
I like that.
I like that too.
Questions are powerful. I think if people can start to understand how they can start answering their own questions, it can lead them to then asking questions of others, that helps lighten up some of those pathways.
Yeah, and especially as you say, we need to change our conversations. If we have the same conversation, we'll go down the same road. But I oftentimes show, when I go into organizations from the get-go, I show a circle and ask the people, like, how much percent of this circle do you know that you know as a person or as humanity? And of course, it's a tiny little sliver, right?
Yeah.
Because most things we don't know about. And then there's a bigger part, which is I know that I don't know. Like, I know that I don't know how to fly a plane or how to do heart surgery, but I can learn it. I know that. So it's a bigger part of that. But the real interesting part is that the part is that we don't know that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So if I ask people, do you know anything? And they say no, because I don't know what I don't know. But that's where development happens. That's where shift and change happens. So we need to have in our world that's not working anymore in the way we practice here. We need to have those conversations where we explore that area where we don't know that we don't know. And the podcast, for example, is a place where you can open those conversations, because you can open that space with people. I've never thought about that. I didn't even know that I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I think that's what this has been driven from. Like, I don't know. I don't know a lot. That's what I do know. So this is our opportunity just to keep asking questions and keep pushing for more and keep being curious. I think that's why a podcast really spoke to me.
yes, yeah. I like to compare it to the Earth is flat versus the Earth is round. At that time, at
Yeah.
Copernicus's time, everybody was thinking the Earth was flat. So that was the knowledge in the world. And so everybody, when they were sailing to India, they were going, of course, they were going east, because otherwise you'd fall off off the Earth. And Copernicus comes along and says, how about the Earth is round?
Yep.
Yeah, and people who were in the flat Earth, they didn't consider that. So they didn't know that they didn't know. But suddenly there's this new paradigm, which everybody fought in the beginning. But Christopher Columbus believed in this paradigm that the Earth was round. So his one thought, the Earth is round, allowed him to go westwards to
Mm-hmm.
India, opening up a completely new world. So again, if we allow this different consciousness to grab hold, if we go into that space that we don't know, it doesn't cost work. It's one different thought. It's effortless, a different thought. If we can go there, and it changes our world. It opens up a completely new world for companies, for people individually. And that's why the space is so intriguing for organizations to explore, but also for us individually, of course.
Yep. It was a radical idea.
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
radical thought. I love it. I love it. Um, I feel like I'm going to end on that because that's kind of a mic drop. I am so glad to have you. I couldn't have kicked off this podcast without you. You were inevitably the only person who could be the first guest. So appreciative of you spending time with me and with our listeners, and really just for being kind of the catalyst behind this. Really excited to continue to work with the Conscious Business Institute. Highly suggest everyone check them out. Peter, thank you. Best of luck and success on your new book coming out. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you, Kendra. I'm honored to be your
Oh,
first guest, and I'd like to support in any way I can. So
thank you.
thanks for doing what you do.
Have a great day.
You too.